Welcome to another MetaField educational series, where the subject today will be our billing cost functionality. We have been working on new capabilities as a part of our product roadmap development over multiple releases in 2020. We hope that you find this new functionality useful in streamlining your processes used to get billing transactional data out of MetaField to support invoicing your clients. My name is Joel Smolarek. I will be your presenter during this educational series. If you have any questions while watching this video, feel free to reach out to your solutions consultant or customer success representative. Let's talk about what we'll be covering during this recording. First, I will go over the benefits of using our billing cost functionality. After that, I will jump into a MetaField for a short product demonstration. This demo will go over setting up billing costs within administration and applying these costs to various work items and forms at a global level. Next, I will show you how costs can be configured within project specifications, so different billing methods and costs can be attributed to a project which will override your global configurations. We will also go over the user interface within Field and Limbs to show how your end users will log these cost transactions. From there, we will show how billing cost transactions can be reviewed and approved in quality control, as well as extracted out of MetaField for use in an accounting system. Finally, I'll touch on financial integrations and who you can partner with if you are interested in integration with your accounting system. So let's talk about benefits of using our billing cost functionality. One of the biggest benefits is that your billing transactions are captured at the time of the event when filling out the form in MetaField. Having field and lab techs capture this data at the end of the day, or even worse, the end of the week, can often lead to inaccurate data and lost revenue. Along the same lines, project-specific configurations will define what the field or lab tech is supposed to collect. For example, one project may have been negotiated to bill the client for travel on a project on a per mile basis, while another may have been negotiated on a per trip basis. If this is configured at the project level, the tech will not need to know what to log. They will be given the correct fields to fill out on the form at the time of data entry. Another big benefit of capturing this data in MetaField is it will allow the same quality review procedures that all the other data that is captured follows. Optionally, there is another secondary review that can be put into place that allows you to approve billing cost transactions that are ready to be billed. And when these transactions are ready to be billed, they can be extracted out of the system in a single normalized extract. You will no longer need to pull data from multiple extracts within utilities. Finally, if you would like billing cost transactions to flow into an accounting system automatically without any manual input, we have developed an API endpoint where this data can be accessed, retrieved, and pushed to another system. So let's get into the product demo. The first thing that I'm going to go over is the administration setup. So we're going to go into administration and we're going to show you how to set up your global cost configurations. So within administration, you are going to go over into this work item billing cost area. And the first thing that you need to set up is all of your cost types. So I'm going to go into cost types. And you can see here that I have numerous cost types set up here for both field and lab activities. So what you're going to do is set up these cost types to essentially match the different transactional cost types that would need to flow through that you capture for accounting purposes. So for example, you'll see there's a cost type for field concrete testing. There's a cost type for mileage. There's a cost type for a lab proctor fee. So these are all just added, and to add one, you just hit add cost type. You simply give it a name, and optionally you can add a code. And that code is going to be the same as the code that you identify that cost with in your accounting system, preferably. So after those cost types are set up, the second thing that you would need to set up is your cost units. Now you can see there's a handful of cost units that don't have the different buttons here along the right-hand side to activate or inactivate. So we do have certain cost units that are pre-configured in the system. You can add additional cost units. So like as you see here, we've added additional cost units for event, hours, mileage, portal to portal, and trips. So essentially you'll just want to make sure that you have all your different cost units added that you'll need. To add a cost unit, you simply hit the add button and you have to provide it a name. Okay, so that's pretty much the first part of the administration setup. The next part is actually setting up your cost rates and cost structure for the different activities that you're going to be doing. So the first way you can set up your cost is at a work item level. And you'll actually want to do this for our discrete forms as well. So there's a different way to do it between the discrete forms and the configurable forms that you build yourself, or if you use one of our form templates, there's a different way that you associate the cost with those, and I'll go over that in a minute. But first I wanted to show you how we associate the costs with our discrete forms. So I'm going to select concrete cast cylinder here because that is associated with one of our discrete areas of MetaField. And you can see down here that there are costs associated with this work item, concrete cast cylinder. We've added a field sampling cost type, a trip charge cost type, and a field concrete testing cost type. And you can actually see this first one here has been deleted. So there's actually only the two down here that are active, and that's the trip charge and the field concrete testing charge. If we look at soil nuclear gauge, this is kind of a similar approach. It's we're doing an hourly rate for the field density testing, a trip charge, and a nuclear gauge rental, which is an hourly rate as well. If I wanted to add any additional costs to these, I would just hit the add cost button down here on the right, and I would have to associate it with a cost type, which we saw how we configured those earlier, a cost unit, a cost per unit, and then optionally I can add a note in as well. You also don't need to put in an actual dollar figure for the cost unit. So a lot of customers aren't really tracking cost out of MetaField so much as they're tracking quantities and for unit pricing and and such, because the costs are actually defined in your project accounting system. So in that case, you would just want to put like a 0 cost per unit in here, because what you're trying to do is actually just capture the quantities of everything. Okay, so that would be one way to set up costs, and that's up by a per work item standpoint. You can also, for work items that are set up and associated with DIY forms that you've created yourself, you can also set up costs at a work item level for those forms as well. But those costs are only going to be presented if the form is opened up through a work order. I'm going to show you another way to associate costs with those types of forms, and that's actually in the form settings. So I'm going to go into activity, which is one of our DIY areas of MetaField, and go into forms. And I'm just going to select one of these forms that we're working on. I'm going to go into this special inspection form here. So the way that you set up the costs at a form level is through the field settings. But before I do that, I want this form to open up and show you a couple of fields that I've added onto this form. So part of the costs that I'm going to track on this form is a total time that I've spent doing this activity, as well as a mileage. And these fields are custom fields that I've added onto this special inspection form. And actually, when you look at total time, this is actually a custom field that I'm calculating the total time based on the arrival time and the departure time fields on this form. So this is a calculated value, which is a custom field on the form. And mileage, this is just a standard number field where I'm asking the user to enter mileage. So when associating costs, those cost transactions with this form, that is done in form settings. So you can see in form settings, I can add the setting to capture costs. And if you have a work item cost associated with this form and have this capture cost marked true, the work item costs are going to show up. If I want to capture costs at a form level, I can open this up for editing, and then I can add form level costs in here. And this is pretty easy to do. It's just like configuring those work item costs. You would just add the costs, and one of the new fields that you can do is you can assign a default quantity field, which can be a custom field that it's looking on the form to pre-populate the quantity based on a custom field that you've filled out in the form. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. It'll be clear when we go through the user interface. But adding costs to forms is easy. You would just have to add the cost, provide a cost type, a cost unit, cost per unit, and like I said before, these can be dollar cost units if you'd like. And then optionally, you can define a default quantity, which is going to source a custom field on your form to pre-populate the quantity, and you can put notes in as well. Okay, so capturing costs this way at a form level can be done on any of the forms that you build out in our DIY engine. So it could be a sample form, it could be an activity form like this, it could be a lab test form, a safety form, any form that's built out in our DIY engine, you'll be able to do this. Okay. So that's showing you how to build out these costs at a global level. Now I want to show you how we can override those global costs at a project level. So if I go home and go into project administration, and then go into specifications, I'm going to look at a project that I've already set up in the system, this hillside apartment complex, and click on View Specifications. So when I go into specifications, there's an area within specifications called costs. So I'm going to click on that. And here's where project level costs can be defined. So for those areas where you've defined work item costs, I can add project specific costs for those same work items by adding a work item cost here. So for example, if there's a project that has been negotiated where for our nuclear gauge density tests, we are not going to charge an equipment rental fee, I can basically just go and associate the cost types, cost units, and unit cost for that project and exclude the rental fee, and then those are the costs that are going to be associated with the nuclear gauge testing, not the global costs that were set up. Same thing with form costs. I can add a form level cost. I would just associate it with a form type, select the form. So again, if I want costs that are set up differently for that special inspection form, I can associate the different cost types and cost units and unit costs and define the default quantity. Just like I did at the form level, this is going to be at the project level. So if it's a different cost type or a different unit cost that I want to associate with this project, I can do that. And then this cost is going to override the global cost at a project level. Okay, so let's get into logging these billing cost transactions. So I'm going to demonstrate this in both the field and the lab. So I'm going to go into the field module. And I'm going to open up activity. And this is that project that we were working on earlier. I'm going to add an activity, and I'm going to find that special inspection form that we set up costs for. So here's that special inspection form. And if there are billing costs associated with that form, those costs are going to populate down here below in its own billing cost section. So you can see those costs that we set up earlier for the field observation and inspection, where you're tracking the number of hours, and then our mileage have both been added into a new section of this form called billing costs. Now, I want to show you one thing, which is remember that cost that we set up for this hourly unit measure for field observations and inspection. That is sourcing this total time form or field on the form. So if I go in here and I put in some time, so I'm just going to set this to 9:29, and I'm going to set this to right now. You can see that this custom field is calculating that's 2 hours, and it's inputting that 2 hour, it's sourcing that same field onto this form. So you can see how that works. And then say I drove 10 miles for this, I entered that field, which is a custom field on my form, and that pre-populates the mileage units down below. Okay, so that's what the field interface looks like. If we go home and we go into the limbs, and I set up a test here, I believe. So I set up a standard proctor here. If I open this to enter test results, standard proctor is one of those forms that I had billing costs associated with it, and you can see the billing cost section is below, and I basically just need to put a unit in here. Okay. All right, so that's logging your transactions here. So then the next step is, once those transactions are logged, how are they being reviewed? So I'm going to go into quality control to show you an area where they can be reviewed. Just as a part of the normal review process that you're probably already going through with all of your other items. So I'm going to go into activity here because I know I have some transactions logged against this hillside apartment complex, and I'm going to view those activities. You can see I have a special inspection form that's been logged. There's a field cost associated with that. And as a PM, as I'm reviewing the data, I can review this data that's on this form, as well as the cost transactions that are on this form. I could change these if I need to and save those results. Similarly, the other area that I want to show you that can be an optional review process is if we look at within the dashboard, there's a billing cost section to the dashboard. And basically the costs that are associated in here are going to be costs that have not been billed. So you can see here, I'm filtered on myself as the project manager. And when I'm filtered on myself, I can see I have 9 cost transactions that currently are not billed in the system for this project. So if I enter into this project, it's going to take me into an area within quality control now. Actually, it's within project administration. It's this billing cost review area. And here will show me all of the billing cost transactions that are there for me to review. So this is going to kind of strip out all the other form data on that was captured on that form and just take those billing cost transactions and put them here where those cost transactions can be reviewed, and here's where you can approve those cost transactions. If I'm also not seeing a cost transaction or I need to edit something, I can open these for editing. I can change the number of units, the total cost, whatever I need to change here, and save that. And I can add an additional cost if I need to. So from here, I can associate it with a work item, cost type, so on and so forth, and save that. And that can be a new cost that's being added that I actually didn't track on a form. Okay, But ideally, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be reviewing these cost transactions and you're going to be approving those costs. So now those cost transactions should be approved. So if I filter up here by approved status, I can see that I don't have any cost transactions that have not been approved. If I look at this, I have all these cost transactions now that have been approved, but notice that I'm also filtering on build equals no. So what this is showing me is that these cost transactions have not been billed yet, which I'm going to show you next, and that's through the utilities process. So there is filtering here. Notice if you went through the dashboard, it's already going to be pre-filtered for cost transactions that have not been billed yet. So that's one thing to note. If you wanted to go into this area outside of using the dashboard, you would just go into project administration, billing costs. You would have to use these search filters up here to select a project. I'll just go into that hillside apartment complex, and then I would want to use the appropriate filtering here where I could find those transactions. I also just want to mention that this little icon here will show you the associated activity record or lab test record or density test record, whatever it is, it'll show you that record that's in the system, and I can easily navigate back to quality control from that field cost area to if I need to make any edits to the actual form itself. Okay, so that's reviewing cost and quality control. The last step of this process is generating your extracts within the utilities module, which I'm going to show you that right now. So if we go back home and then go into the utilities module, all of those billing cost transactions are going to be normalized and added into this one billing cost data extract. So if you're currently supporting your invoicing to your clients by pulling a density testing data extract, a concrete grout and mortar data extract, a sampling data extract to get basically units of each one of those things. If you capture all of those things through this billing cost functionality, the only extract that you're going to have to pull is this billing cost data extract. So within this extract, I have this filtering across the top that allow me to filter on different things. In this case, I'm just going to do a simple filter and say, show me everything that has not been billed, and I am going to put in that project number that we were working on before. So the project that I was working on was C20B, and that should be enough. So you can see here are those cost transactions. And I can choose to just extract those cost transactions, or I can choose to bill those cost transactions. It's really doing the same thing, but if I extract those cost transactions, it's just going to give me this data that you see here in a CSV file. If I choose to bill these cost transactions, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to generate that CSV file, but it's also going to put a build date and timestamp on these transactional records. And when I use my filtering in the dashboard or use my filtering within quality control for things that have been billed, it'll basically filter out these if I choose to bill these records. So I'm going to select all these records and select bill selected records. I could have also selected bill all records as well. But what this is going to do is it's going to generate that billing extract. So I'm just going to call this billing extract and put a date in here and save it to the desktop here. And then I'll open up this billing extract here. So basically, this is the same data that we see in MetaField on the utilities search results screen. One thing to note on these billing extracts, as well as the screen there, is I'm also able to associate these billing cost transactions with the different cost types, the unit code or the cost type codes, if they're there, a lab, if it's a lab type test form and it's associated with a lab. All of the different dollar amounts will show up if you're actually tracking your cost in MetaField. And then the big one here for kind of backup, it's going to tell me what data record in the system this is associated with. So this is going to show me the sample that this cast cylinder was captured against. So in this case, these cost transactions were captured against sample 187. In this case, this is showing me that this is soil nuclear gauge test number 1. And this is the lab test number 190. So if you're looking for backup to associate a billing cost transaction with the actual record that it was associated with, that's included here in the CSV file, as well as in the interface as well. Notice that now those billing cost transactions go away because I'm filtered on billed equals no. If I filter on yes, then you can see those again here. And if I go back to our dashboard, you can see costs not billed. Those costs are now 0, so I don't have anything as a project manager or a project admin or whoever you give the responsibility of reviewing and approving those billing cost transactions, as well as generating the extract. You can see that this is down to 0 now, which means I'm capturing all that revenue. All right. So that is it for the project or the product demonstration. Let me bring up the PowerPoint because there's one last thing that I want to talk about before we end it here. So the last thing is, I mentioned this earlier, but if you would like to integrate with your accounting system, we now have an API on our end to interface with. There are essentially 3 options for integration, and I'll go over each of those right now. So option 1, we can provide you with a functional specification of our APIs. This can be used in developing your own integration, which you would in turn host and maintain. So if you have internal resources to address APIs, we're more than happy to provide you the documentation needed to do that integration on your own. You would just want to reach out to us to get that documentation. So that's option 1. The second option is you can use a development partner that you have used in the past to design your integration for you. So if you've done other integrations and you've used other development partners to do that, same thing. you would really just need to provide them with our functional specification, and then they would in turn design an integration for you, and you would have to determine who's hosting and maintaining that, that integration once it's been developed. But the option that I want to spend the most time on is our third option, which is you can use our preferred integration partner, which is Impact Group. You can see that there on this slide. They've worked with multiple Agile Frameworks customers on designing and implementing custom integration solutions. If you're interested in this because you don't have the means to do it yourself, or you don't have an integration partner that you've worked with in the past, by all means, you can use our preferred integration partner. If you're interested in learning more about Impact Group and the services they offer, please contact your solutions consultant or customer success representative. And that concludes this video. I want to thank all of you for watching. If you have any questions or ideas for future educational series videos, please reach out to your solutions consultant or customer success representative. You can also watch previously recorded videos by navigating to the link you see on the screen there. Everybody take care and keep your eyes out for new educational series videos in the coming months. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.